Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I was captain of an Embraer 175 that afternoon, tail number ending in KM, parked at a United Express gate on the F concourse at O'Hare. The airplane was clean, fueled for a short hop to Grand Rapids, and humming gently on APU bleed with the cabin at a comfortable 22 degrees. I'd finished my walk-around 20 minutes earlier, tracing the familiar path. Nose gear chocks aligned, safety pins stowed, static wicks intact, tires without cord showing, flaps clean, spoilers flush, pitot covers off. Nothing out of place except the way everyone kept glancing at their phones. It had been like that for 2 days already. Family group chats stacked with new messages, news alerts dripping in vague words about incidents, a push notification from my union about employee assistance lines if needed. I had tapped each one, watched a quiet, professional part of my mind lock it all away, and then I'd started my captain's flow. Inside, the cockpit smelled like coffee and warm avionics. Plastic, panel paint, a little ozone. My first officer, Maya Patel, had been on the radio with ramp control, getting a pushback time while I set up the FMS for our route. We'd briefed a normal departure, earned 8 CID off 28R, and we'd talked through contingencies the way we always did. Winds, weather, runway condition, mal items, none. Single engine profile, terrain and obstacles, taxi hotspots. The kind of ritual that keeps anxious hearts steady. The cabin crew, 2 today, Jess up front and Owen in the back, had already counted their catering and secured the galley latches. I'd stepped out to the door for the standard pre-board hello with Carla, the gate agent I knew by voice before I saw her name badge. She'd smiled, tired but game as always, sliding a stack of boarding passes into a plastic holder. "We're tight on overhead bins, Captain," she'd told me. Half the plane brought their winter coats and their life stories. I'd grinned at that. We joked about it every holiday season, the migration of coats that ate row 12 whole. Now the hold light glowed amber on the forward attendant panel as the jet bridge inched inward with its soft mechanical groan. The main door, L1, was still unarmed. Regional jets like ours didn't use slides at the forward door, and Jess stood at the threshold in her navy blazer, welcoming the first wave of boarding Group 1 with that warm voice she saved for parents and anxious solo flyers. We were 5 minutes into boarding when the terminal changed. It wasn't a sound at first. It was air. Air that seemed to tighten, like the building was bracing for a gust. Then a chorus of tones rolled out across the concourse, a syncopation of alerts and ringtones, and people began lifting their phones with identical, puzzled frowns. I felt my own phone buzz inside my blazer. 2 messages, one from dispatch, one a government alert that read, in clean black text, "Emergency action message, temporary shelter in place, order for airport terminals. Remain at current location. Await instructions from local authorities. Avoid crowding. Medical response teams en route." I looked up. In the jetway window, I could see a sliver of the F concourse and the sweep of ceiling lights. TSA officers in pale blue shirts were already stepping out of the checkpoint, talking into radios. 2 airport police and a soldier in tan boots, a patch I didn't recognize on his sleeve, were moving fast toward our side of the concourse. Carla glanced down the hall, then at me, the shape of the question written on her face. I put my phone on the glare shield and keyed the interphone. "Jess, hold boarding for a minute. Let's pause here, please. We may have a terminal advisory." Her voice came back calm. "Copy, Captain. Holding." She turned to the couple in front of her, parents in matching fleece, their teenagers' earbuds dangling, and said, Hang tight 1 second. We'll keep you comfy." But the concourse didn't want to be kept. Noise gathered like weather. A gate 3 down had a knot of people around the podium, hands up, voices rising. Across from us, a woman slapped the windows with her palm. Not angry, urgent. Carla stepped to the bridge door, peered out toward the central corridor, then looked back. "They're setting up a cordon," she said to me, sotto voce. "They want us to keep passengers in place, no one out to the concourse." "Copy." My voice sounded like it always did. That was the job. Make it sound normal, and you buy everyone a breath longer to stay human. I returned to the cockpit, sat, and watched Maya watch me. She had been flying 6 years, sharp as a blade, unflappable, and that made her feelings legible in small ways only. The tiny muscle at her jaw said she'd seen the alert. "We're not going anywhere," she murmured. "No," I confirmed, scanning the EICAS, pressurization and manual, packs off for the jet bridge open signal, and then the overhead for the APU load. "But we can make this airplane the safest room on the block for as long as we need." I keyed the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck, Captain Arman speaking. You may have received a shelter-in-place alert. We're going to hold right here. If you're already on board, please stay seated for the moment. If you're on the jet bridge, Jess and Owen will direct you. Everything's under control. We appreciate your calm and patience." I could hear the little catch in the air that always followed a PA like that. People exhaling, shoulders settling a centimeter. We'd boarded maybe 15 souls when the man in the Navy windbreaker crumpled near the glass podium outside. He did not fall like people usually fall. It was a slow hinge from the middle, like he had turned to look at the ceiling and his legs forgot their job. The woman beside him, wife from the way she took his elbow, bent and said something I couldn't hear. She touched his face, then flinched like she touched a stove. A TSA supervisor reached them first, one hand at his radio, the other held open in a stay-back gesture that let everybody know he'd done this before. 2 more officers in dark uniforms with MP patches came at a jog from the service corridor, their belts heavy with gear that suddenly seemed larger than they had a minute ago. I heard the gate podium printer spit out a string of bag tags as if it had decided nothing could possibly be wrong, and then the concourse filled with a brittle, echoing shout, "Clear the area. Everyone remain in place. Move away from the cordon, now." Carla took 1 step toward the terminal, then back. She pulled the bridge door shut, which was the only thing she could control. She looked at me. I looked at Jess. We were a line of people who had spent our lives moving strangers from one place to another. In our world, doors were always opening. "Captain," Jess said low on the interphone, "we've got 50 in the seating area. I've asked them to stay seated. We also have a family of 4 on the jet bridge. Should I bring them in?" "Bring them in," I said. "Then we'll close for a moment." I didn't like sealing the aircraft with passengers still out on the concourse, but the jet bridge was an extension of us now, and I needed the environment quiet. "All right, guys," Jess said aloud in the tone that moved mountains. "Let's step inside now, all the way in, thank you." They were barely through when the jet bridge shook. It wasn't dramatic, a quiver, a noise like a rolling cart bumping over the threshold. Then the concourse noise hit the bridge in a wave, voices layered on voices, a whistle, a shout of pain like a violin string drawn too hard, the clap of hard-soled shoes on terrazzo. "Door," Maya said. "Door," I echoed, and stepped to the L1 handle. The main cabin door closes with a heavy, satisfying pull on a curved handle that has more leverage than it looks like it should. I rolled it through the arc and felt the locking pins engage in their steel housings. The green stripe on the indicator vanished. The door was closed. The airplane grew small and tight. Jess was there with her shoulder under the frame, adding a human piece of assurance the manual never mentions. Another tremor ran through the bridge. I pressed the interphone. Jess, Owen. Situational awareness. Keep everyone seated and quiet. I'm going to talk to the ground. Copy, Jess breathed. She'd switched to her disaster voice. Quiet, low, certain. Folks, we're going to keep the door closed for a few minutes. You're safe here. If you need water or a seatbelt extender, raise your hand and I'll come to you. The concourse sounds tangled into something I didn't want to name. I forced my head back into the frame. Checklists, communications, options. I keyed a different interphone switch. Ramp from flight. A beat of static, and then Miguel. Ramp lead I'd known since both of us were younger. Go ahead, 3,795. Miguel, we may need assistance securing the area. There's a terminal shelter order in activity outside our door. I need 2 things, eyes on our right side and a belt loader positioned under the R1 service door just in case. Copy. I'm looking at you from the tug. We'll bring a belt. A pause, then enough humanity in his voice to make my throat tighten. I've got you, Cap. I opened my side window a half-inch to the world, cold April air in a thin blade, and listened. The ramp was quieter than the terminal. Jet blast sighed from a taxiing Airbus out at F4. An ARFF truck idled near the Dias pad, yellow paint clean and bright like a promise. Over that came the murmur from inside our aluminum shell. A baby learning the edge of a cry, a zipper, the warm hush of 100 people choosing to be decent together. 3 thuds at the L1 door made everyone freeze. Jess was already there. Please stay seated, she called without raising her voice. Owen had a galley cart braced at row 1. Its brakes down. A chrome rectangle that looked absurdly brave. The thuds came again, and then a scraping like a dolly wheel riding along the exterior door seam. Somebody out in the jet bridge yelled hoarsely. Somebody else, a woman, shouted, "Open, please open." No one moved toward the door, which is one way you know how capable a crew is. No one moved toward the door. I took the crash axe from its bracket behind my left shoulder. It's not a weapon in the way movies think about it. It's a tool, short, dull, designed to pry open panels or clear light aluminum in an emergency. I held it partly because that's what you do when you're the visible spine of the space, and partly for Jess, who looked back once without looking panicked, just wanting to see me there. Inside the terminal, something gave way. The sound is difficult to describe in a way that doesn't feel unkind. A rising, layered chorus of voices, too many feet moving at once, the crack of acrylic. The jet bridge bounced on its wheels. I imagined the flex of its aluminum ribs, the rubber bellows around our door frame, the way its lights would be swinging inside. I had the sudden, bizarre thought of the last time I'd guided my daughter across a bounce house at a birthday party, our careful, bouncing steps, and I pushed the thought away so hard it left a physical ache in my chest. Maya touched my arm, a 2-finger press. Options. Right, I said, grateful. I laid the axe over the cockpit sill and spoke into the interphone with Ramp. Miguel, what's our right side look like? Clean, he said. 2 rampers, me, and a belt coming around now. ARFFs staged by H. We got MP at the top of the bridge on the terminal side, but folks are moving. Copy. We may need a controlled egress off the right service door to the ramp. A breath. If the bridge is compromised, we do not open L1. We use R1. Over wing if required. Jess came on the line. I heard. I can secure the front with carts. I've got Owen prepping the overwing. Maya, she caught herself. In stressful moments, we forget which name belongs to which phone. Captain, I'll need you on the PA in 30 seconds. I want them in their belts and ready to move when I point. standing by. Another thud struck the door with feeling. This time, a hand slid through the rubber bellows seam at the peep window. Fingers gray with dust or makeup or some spilled thing. The hand didn't paw at the window. It pressed flat, like a lost person trying to prove they were still a person. I saw Jess swallow and saw her decide to stay steady. I keyed the PA. "Friends, hi again, it's your captain. We're going to make an airplane-sized bubble of calm together, all right? Stay buckled for me. Keep your bags where they are. If you're by the overwing exits, rows 12 and 13, please review the instructions in your seat back pocket. We are not opening those unless we ask you to. Parents, you know what to do. Keep your little ones close. Jess and Owen will direct any movements. We're in communication with folks on the ramp. You are safe." The door window darkened with bodies. There was no banging now, only pressure. Heavy. Patient. The bridge wheels groaned. Down on the ramp, the belt loader nosed to our right side. Rampers pulled its ladder up, the rollers quiet, as if the machine understood we needed stealth more than speed. The service door on the right didn't have a slide. That was an airline catering hallway most days, a place for coffee pots and trash. Today, it was a second chance. Maya's voice was level. "APU bleed is good, packs off, cabin is ready, interphone hot, ground frequency on 2. "Thank you," I keyed the radio. "O'Hare ground, United Express 3795 at F12. We are stationary at the gate with a security situation in the terminal. We may need ARFF and MP assistance to secure the jet bridge and conduct a right-side egress to the ramp." Ground read me on first call. That clear Chicago voice that sounds unshakable even on the worst day in January. "Express 3795 ground. Copy your advisory. ARFF 6 and 7 are rolling your way. Remain in place. Hold all doors, except as necessary for safety." "Remaining," I said, and set the handset down like it was an egg. The hand at the window slid away and then came back with more force, fingers whitening. A face pressed next, a man's, mid-40s, windbreaker, hairline at the temple damp as if he'd run. His eyes were wrong, and I reached for other words before my brain could reach for the usual ones. Unfocused, too bright. They didn't track the way eyes track. They shone at the idea of the opening, not the people on the other side. The skin at his cheek had a smear, food, drink, and he was breathing hard against the glass. Then his mouth opened, and he shouted, not words, and the sound filled the cabin with pure reflex. The baby in row 6 went off like a small alarm clock. Someone whispered a prayer that was more breath than syllables. Jess did what the best flight attendants do when the air wants to break. She stepped between the door and the cabin, a living column. "Eyes on me," she said softly. "Eyes here." She touched the galley cart with one hand, checked the brake with the toe of her shoe, and looked over her shoulder once at me, at the axe on his ledge, at the window that felt too small and too big at the same time. The pressure on the door intensified. The bridge wheels chirped as weight shifted. A light flickered in the bridge ceiling, long bulbs and plastic housings, then steadied. I heard a voice outside, military, the kind of tone that cuts through smoke, and then a sound like a cart tumbling, and then the pressure did not intensify so much as flow. Bodies funneling, feet lighting, the bridge an artery with a heart at the concourse end beating too fast. I had always believed in doors. You can spend your whole career believing in what a door can do and forget all the things it can't. "Miguel," I said, "are you there?" "Right here." "How many on the ramp with you?" "4 of us. 2 more coming. ARFF 20 seconds out. We can get the belt under your R1 in 10. "Do it." I looked at Maya, who had already brought the emergency lights to bright and unlatched the cockpit door. We were not going to barricade ourselves behind it, not while we had a crew in a cabin that felt 3 inches deep and 2 miles long. We'll bring Jess and Owen to R1 on my call. Overwing ready if needed. Maya nodded. I'll take the service door, she said, and I nodded back. We didn't need to explain that the captain stays where the center of gravity is human, front and visible, while the FO goes where the hinge is about to become an exit. Another impact at L1. The window flexed and held. The design is good aluminum and better steel. It is not absolute. The old axiom moved through my head. Aviate, navigate, communicate, and I added a fourth for myself. Something I had learned the morning my daughter was born and every flight since. Organize. Jess, I said, you and Owen brace L1 with the carts. Seat the bulkhead passengers and anyone standing. Prepare R1 to open on my call. Quiet drill. We don't spook anyone. Owen, brief the overwing row. If you see me point to you, you're going to open the hatch and step out onto the wing, then sit with your legs on the trailing edge until directed by rampers below. Nobody jumps. We will have people and a belt loader there. Copy, Jess said, her breath steady in my ear. We've got this. In the window at L1, there was a smear now where the man's forehead kept striking, his breath fogging the little glass oval. He had stopped shouting and started to make a sound like someone whose windpipe was working against itself. He didn't look sick. Not the way I'd grown up imagining sick. He looked fast. He looked like a person whose brain was a drive chain without a clutch. I gripped the interphone and spoke to the cabin once more. Folks, we're going to make a move on the right side of the airplane. It's going to look a little odd, and it's going to be perfectly fine. You'll be guided. You'll go slow, not fast. You will go together. Our friends on the ramp are professionals. You're going to meet them on the concrete and follow their instructions to a safe bus. We will take care of you. I heard my father's voice in my own when I said it and almost broke on that rock, and then did not. ARFF arrived like sunrise. Big yellow trucks, lights balanced between helpful and not too bright. The crew on the nearest rolled a hose, not foam, water at low pressure, and gave the air under the jet bridge a gentle, purposeful mist. They weren't washing anyone away. They were making a space. 2 airport police took the foot of the bridge, palms up, their bodies a kind of nonviolent geometry. Quiet competence is as contagious as panic if you get it in first. Maya had the R1 door handle armed, the manual lock pin retracted. I'm ready, she said. Go. She cracked the service door inward, and we were all suddenly breathing air that wasn't ours. Ramp, air, burned Jet A eddying into the cabin. A whiff of spring cold. Miguel was there, 2 rampers bracing the belt's handrail, eyes bright and sane and full of every kind of focus. The ramp had shrunk to a jewel. Our right side, a triangle of clear concrete, the belt like a gangplank to a smaller world. The ARFF truck, a yellow wall with a heart. Jess, I said. Bring me 10 to R1. Families first, I'll stay at L1. We moved like the inside of a watch, every wheel on its jewel. The first family came forward, Jess's hand at their backs. Owen guiding their elbows like he'd done it his whole career. Maya stood at the service door with a smile that reached her eyes, held the handrail of the belt, and placed their palms on it. A ramper held the father's forearm lightly, just a human touch to say, I'm with you through this part. They went down one by one, a sturdy line of cautious people doing something entirely weird and entirely correct. Another family, another, a pair of grandparents, a young couple holding hands like a rope. Behind me, L1 absorbed a larger impact than before. The jet bridge's rubber flexed. The man's face filled the porthole again. Another joined him. A woman with hair in a bun coming loose, and she made the same not-quite-word sound. They had the focus of fish in a stream, inexorable. Someone further out in the bridge thudded against the side wall, and the rib there gave a hollow ring. I felt the airplane's skin respond. A tick I recognized from years of hearing every kind of metallic note an aluminum tube can make. "Overwing," Owen said, and I turned and saw a problem. The flow at R1 had turned into a clot. The belt was down. The ARFF truck had edged forward to shield us, but a few on the ramp had frozen when they saw the shape of the concourse. They couldn't see everything, but they'd seen enough shadow and motion to make their hindbrains grab the rails. We'd bought calm in the cabin with words. On the ramp, we had to buy it with choreography. "Overwing row," I said. "Now." The two passengers there, a woman in a red hoodie with a runner's economy of motion and a man with a service dog vest in his lap, nodded like they'd been waiting all their lives to be useful. The runner popped the hatch, heaved it onto the seat, and swung her legs through. She sat where we'd wanted her to sit, feet on the trailing edge, and looked at Miguel below, who gave her the open-hand stay gesture you use with good dogs and good people. The man with the dog followed, calm as a lake, his hand never leaving the lab's harness as they eased to the wing route. Two more passengers took the cue and stepped through. The wing had become a porch, clean and white, with people sitting like gulls, entirely normal and entirely surreal. Another thump at L1, harder. The door flexed. I could feel the force come through the metal under my palm. I leaned my shoulder to it and felt it hold. 3 seconds later, another impact rang down the frame. We had bought minutes run out. I keyed my mic. Ground 3,795. We are conducting R1 and overwing egress to ramp. Pressure on the jet bridge continues. Request MP at the bridge route and ARFF low pressure stream to discourage further approach. Copy, ground said without heat, without the thing everyone was starting to feel. Units are in place. Keep me advised. Maya looked down the aisle where Jess was moving the cabin like she was conducting music, hands, eyes, voice. Owen guided another pair to the overwing. The runner in the hoodie reached back to steady them, her face set in the same expression I'd seen on marathon finish lines. Miguel, on the ramp, used his whole body to telegraph ease. One step at a time, one breath, one step. The belt began to flow again. The L, one window darkened completely. Hands pressed. I thought of the thousands of times I'd stood at a door smiling while people streamed aboard with their coffee and their plans. I thought of the 1,000 small kindnesses I'd watched happen in aisle seats. I thought of how many times I'd signed a bag or carried a stroller or made a phone call to a gate agent to ask them to hold the door for a family whose day had been too full of hard seconds. I did not think about turning the deadbolt on the cockpit and closing it between me and my crew. Later, and there would be a later, though I did not know it then, I would learn which of us had chosen to be alone and which had chosen to be with. On that day, in that minute, I chose to be a body at the door with the people I was supposed to be a door for. The first true hit came then. A weight that wasn't a person but a tide. The bridge wheels rolled half an inch. The bellows smeared another line across the window. I felt the frame answer with a groan and then find its place again. Aluminum is patient steel. It yields and holds. If you've flown long enough, you start to trust what it will do and what it won't. It would protect us longer than the people outside wanted to push. "Half cabin remaining," Jess said. Her voice had become a metronome. "We're good, Captain. We're good." Copy. I realized my knuckles were white on the axe handle and loosened them like you loosen a clenched jaw. "You're doing perfectly." ARFF's low stream hissed underneath the bridge like rain. MP at the concourse route used their bodies as geometry again, shaping the space with open hands and stances learned in training yards. It didn't stop anything out in the terminal, but it let us finish something in here. The last 10 passengers came forward. The older man, who had declined wheelchair assistance at the podium earlier, gave me a nod like a salute and set his hand on the belt. A teenage boy in a city hoodie pretended he wasn't shaking, and then didn't have to pretend because Maya made him laugh by asking him if he'd ever wanted to ride a luggage slide, and he said, "Not like this," and she said, "Me neither, man," and he grinned, and then he went down sure-footed. Jess and Owen were last, as they always would be. Owen checked the laugh once, then twice, because that's what you do when you've learned the lesson of the sleeping passenger in the wrong minute of a red-eye. Jess swept a hand under each row's window shades like a harpist, told a woman at 3A that her purse was still in the seatback pocket, and got a grateful look that would live in my chest for hours. They reached me at the door, and I could see in the set of their shoulders that neither would go until I told them to, and so I told them to, and they went, and there was an instant of comedy because Jess wanted to keep her dignity on the belt, and the belt was not a dignified tool, and then she laughed at herself and slid beautifully down into the open arms of the team on the ramp, and it was perfect, the small human proportion in a minute trying to grow too big. Maya looked at me. "Your move, Captain." "I'll close," I said, and she nodded because there was no one left to be brave for, and so we each had to be brave for the other. She stepped onto the belt. I held the service door one extra second to make sure the wind didn't take it, and then I followed, closing it as I went. The ramp air hit me broadside. Not cold now, not anything but outside, and then I was on the belt, my hand on the rail, Miguel's face below me saying, "Got you," and then a ramper's grip on my forearm and the ground, blessedly simple and hard and sure. On the ramp, the world reassembled itself around us with the practical logic of a flight line. ARFF made a half circle with their trucks, not pinning us, just holding space. The MP and airport police from the concourse side had followed orders and physics as long as they could, and now were falling back in good order toward the service corridor. The jet bridge shook once more and then settled, its internal lights playing strobe behind the port window. In the airline world, you learn to name everything. There are no ghosts here, only systems, vent valves, lab service panels, packs. I named what was happening something like terminal crowd dynamics, so I could do the next right thing. "Buses," Miguel said. "Ops is sending buses to the hard stand. We'll stage those we've got and take them to the old cargo building by H. Ops wants us away from the concourse." "Good," I said, and then, because there was one thing left, turned to the cockpit windows. The E-175 doesn't have a windscreen you can see through from ground level at the right angle if the sun's up. Today, with the cloud, I could see our reflection, the jet and the yellow trucks and a knot of people on the ramp arranged around our wing like a low, peculiar festival. I keyed my headset and spoke on the ground frequency without thinking about whether I had permission. "Ground, 3,795. Go ahead." "The aircraft is secure. Cabin is clear. We are moving passengers to the cargo facility with ramp escort." "Copy 3,795, ground said. "Advise when clear of the area." "Will do." I took my finger off the button and looked at Maya, who had already begun moving the first group toward the waiting coach, her hands raised in that universal gesture of herding without hurrying. Jess walked beside a woman with a baby, murmuring the kind of small, fun nonsense that turns a child's body from a spring into a hammock. Owen had somehow acquired a stack of bottled waters and was pressing them into hands like communion. We formed a queue with cones and ground crew vests, and the knowledge of 100 boarding processes turned inside out. It moved. It kept moving. The buses came. We filled them. We sent them off with a security vehicle leading and a maintenance truck behind. We did it again. On the fourth cycle, a TSA supervisor jogged up. Ellis, a man I'd seen 100 times in a blue shirt that always looked one size too big and never had a wrinkle. He had a radio to his ear and a clipboard with nobody left to check off. "Captain," he said, and there was relief in seeing a person whose name I knew say my job out loud. "We're consolidating to Bravo cul-de-sac on the service road. MP wants to collapse the cordon and move inward. You and your people go to H cargo. Stay there. Don't go back into the terminal." "I'm not taking anyone into the terminal," I said, and he nodded, and some of the tension left his shoulders. "Ellis," I said, "how bad is it inside?" He hesitated, not because he was hiding anything, but because he was a professional and he wanted to do the work of making things smaller. "It's crowded," he said. "People are scared. We've got medical calls stacked at E and L. We've got folks who aren't thinking straight. We're working it." He squeezed my shoulder once, a human thing in a procedural minute, and moved on. When the last bus rolled, I had to make the choice I'd been measuring in the back of my head since the moment the first alert went off. Whether to leave the airplane as it was, secured and cold, or take her somewhere I could see her again. You can laugh at that I was even thinking about an aluminum tube with seats when there were human beings under my care. But if you've never flown a machine for a living, you won't understand that airplanes are also our people. And if we were going to put these human beings in buses in a city that suddenly didn't feel like it had edges, it might be useful to have a pressurized, climate-controlled room with a bathroom and a radio that could talk to anyone. I looked at Miguel. "We can take the jet," he said before I asked. "Tow to H. I've got a tug and a bar." I nodded. "Let's do it by the book," I said, out of reflex, and then smiled because I could see the way he'd braced for me to say "by the book," and he smiled too. "Chocks, pins, remove the belt, call ground. I'll keep the APU on. No engines. We don't need noise. We just need home." "Copy," he said. "Home." We did it with a quiet that felt holy. Gear pins in. Circuit breakers where they should be. APU running sweetly under her tail. The tailpipe bright inside like a candle. I walked up the belt once more, re-entered the cabin, and checked every row as if my life depended on it, because it did. We'd left no one. We'd left only seatbelts and little loops and the thoughts that stick to fabric after people have held it tight. In the cockpit, Maya watched me strap in. "Tow speed is 5, she said. "ARFF escort in front, maintenance behind. Ops will meet us at H2. We have a security sweep waiting there." "Good." I took the tiller from nowhere. I had nothing to steer. Old habit, hands lightly on the world. Miguel stood by the tug with a thumb in the air. I gave him one back. Ground cleared us to move. The tug took our nose gently, and we began the slowest taxi I've ever done. As we rolled, the airport reintroduced itself as a place that had not fallen down, just bent. A 737 pushed from K with a marshaller using his wands like candles in a procession. A line of cabs idled on the access road with their windows down, the driver's elbows on the sills, watching with the posture of people about to make a decision. A police SUV nudged along next to a family walking where no one walks, the officer inside pointing towards the shuttle lot with his palm out like he was offering a plate. We crossed a service road where the MP cordon sat, tired shoulders, clear eyes. One of them, woman, tall, freckles like paint, knocked twice on our fuselage as we passed and then raised her fist and put it down gently like a stamp. It was a private oath against chaos. I gave her a 2-finger salute through the side window and she grinned, small and fierce. At H, the cargo building was half ghost and half refuge. A concrete box with a high roll-up door and the remains of a holiday party banner still taped inside. Ops had pulled 3 buses into a horseshoe. We parked the jet on a painted tee with more care than we needed and set the chocks. The tug let go like a good partner who doesn't hold on too long. I powered the cabin like we were taking passengers to Tulsa. Lights, air, water. Jess and Owen had already turned the galley into a corner of kindness, stacking plastic cups in a pyramid, cracking open snack drawers that we normally counted like gold. Maya found the airport maintenance manager, Navarro, a woman with a streak of silver in her black hair who moved like a firefighter because she was one, and asked for a first aid corner. Navarro pointed, and it appeared. We organized the bus's worth of people into circles. Families on one, solo travelers on another, elderly in chairs by the wall where warm air pooled. A man in a Packers sweatshirt found an outlet and began charging phones. Someone started a list of names with a Sharpie on a sheet of cargo manifest paper. Names of spouses, kids, I'm here, and we taped it to a rolling cart with a strip of orange inspection sticker. We placed 3 of our cabin blankets like islands and told people to take off their shoes if they needed to. In 20 minutes, a space with forklifts became a room. I called dispatch from a desk phone Navarro had found in a side office, one of those phones with a corporate logo that you think won't work until it does. I told them where we were and that we had our passengers and what I would do with the aircraft if the airport asked it of me. Dispatch told me they were staffing a crisis desk with a human at every position and that I should protect my crew and that they would call my wife if I wanted. I said yes, and then I said no, and then I said I would call myself. It felt important that my wife hear my voice even if it shook when I told her I was safe. It shook. She told me she was home and there were sirens on the highway and the news was saying words in careful voices. She asked me the question that would thread itself through the day. Should I go get her from school? And I told her to wait for the school's instruction and to text our block because there were people on our street who did not have family nearby and they would need someone to tell them whether to go outside. She said she loved me the way you say it when you're putting it in a bank you might not be able to visit again. And I said it back, and then I put the receiver down and let the sound fall out of my hands like water. I wish this were the part of the story where we learned new things about the virus, or the city, or the nation. I wish I could tell you we had facts. We had what you always have in an early storm. Pieces, rumors, a shape you can't see all of at once. Incidents across the terminal. Medical calls that outnumbered the medics. People moving without hearing. People running who were fine 10 minutes ago. Politely worded suspensions of service. A government alert that went out again to say the same thing in more careful words. A map on someone's phone with pins in places that wouldn't hold still. Here's what we did with that. We made sandwiches out of snack boxes and pretzel bags. We handed out cups of water and told people to sip. We got people to write down names and numbers so that when the cell towers hiccuped, the numbers still existed on paper. Owen turned on the cabin's Wi-Fi and got our aircraft's portal to cough up a basic signal, enough for texts to go and trickle back in. Maya sat with a teenager and her grandfather and drew the way air moves over a wing on a paper towel, because the girl had asked, and because knowledge is a light. ARF Captain Navarro came in and briefed us without being dramatic. The concourse saw a surge, she said. We had some folks panic, and some folks who didn't respond to attempts to move them. Some medical. We used low-pressure streams to create distance where we had to. We're building a funnel to the buses. If you have special needs in here, put a sticky note on them. Color code them for mobility, medical, meds needed, separated families. It'll help when we consolidate to a larger shelter. Will there be one? I asked. There will, she said, like there was no other universe. We're people. We build places. I took 3 sticky notes and went to work. We color-coded the room. We found 3 inhalers and put them where the inhalers would end up when they were needed. We made a whiteboard on the side of the airplane with a dry erase marker, drawing a schedule that had maybe one real time on it. Shift change, water duty, and several aspirational ones. We assigned someone to stand by the cargo door with a stack of those little wooden stir sticks from the galley and count the number of people who left for the restroom and count them back. When night fell, it fell in a way nobody ever prepares you for. We're used to night being something with a schedule, gates shutting with a little clunk, concourses emptying of the day's last delay. This night felt like a theater going dark between acts. It was full of action in other rooms. It was heavy with what we couldn't see. But here, by the cargo door, the lights hummed overhead, and the air smelled like water and shoe rubber and the faint ghost of jet fuel. And in the quiet at the edge of the crowd, I could hear the APU breathing under the tail of my airplane, and it sounded like a dog sleeping with its head on your foot. Around 9, a young man in a camouflage jacket that wasn't military slipped through the cargo door and stood just inside, scanning the room like a parched person looking for a fountain. I lifted a hand. "Friend," I said, because it was the right word in that minute. "Who are you looking for?" He held up his phone. On the cracked screen was a photo of the runner in the red hoodie from our overwing, hair now tied back with a rubber band. "My sister," he said. "Is she here?" She rose from a blanket island halfway to the galley like she'd been listening the whole time. I watched them cover the distance fast and slow. Fast with their feet, slow with their hands, like they were coming back from a long disagreement rather than an airport afternoon, and then I looked away because what came next wasn't for me. I walked back to the airplane. I stood in the door and ran a hand along the threshold where 100,000 feet had stepped. I imagined the tide at L1 slacking at last when the MP pulled the bridge back, the sound of rubber releasing steel. I thought of Ellis's clipboard and Miguel's thumb in the air and the way Maya had made a boy laugh when he needed permission to stop shaking. I thought of Jess's hands on small shoulders and Owen's pockets packed with bottle caps. I thought of the soldier with freckles knocking on my fuselage like it was a church door and sealing me into a faith I had not known was still alive in me. Near midnight, with the buses moving again on a schedule that felt like a heart that had remembered how to keep time, Navarro gathered 4 of us. Me, her, a city EMS lieutenant with tired eyes, and the airport's operations chief, a woman who wore her radio like it was a second spine. We stood by the back wall under a bulletin board filled with safety posters and old barbecue photos and made a small plan. We'll move this group to the United hangar," Ops said, tapping a map someone had drawn with a grease pencil. "It's got room, bathrooms, a break room with coffee, and a security door we can actually hold. We'll keep your airplane here on APU as a warming room and comms point. ARFF will stay on the loop." "Copy," Navarro said. "We'll escort in 2 waves. First wave families and medical." She looked at me. "You and your crew ride with Wave 2. I need you on your feet for another 2 hours." "Yes, ma'am," I said, and meant the respect, not the rank. We did it like that. We did it with flashers reflecting off aluminum and shadows moving at human speed. We did it without drama, which is the highest form of competence. We did it with the sound of rolling suitcase wheels for accompaniment. The first wave went. Then the second. My crew and I closed the airplane by habit. Fuel numbers noted, security seals placed where seals should go, cockpit cold and quiet. The APU shut down. The tailpipe cooled down to dull. The cabin lights went in steps like a theater, to dim and then to amber and then to out. When we finally sat in the break room at the hangar with paper cups of coffee that tasted like relief, someone turned on a small television in the corner. The news said words in careful voices. They said the numbers they could say. They said the names they could say. They showed pictures of terminals that looked like ours, and faces that looked like our faces. And they kept their cameras pointed at windows and doors and hands doing helpful work, because that is what you show when you choose not to make fear your product. Maya leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes for 5 whole seconds. Jess rubbed her forearm in small circles like one of those cats you see in shop windows with their paws raised, mechanical and soothing. Owen stared at the steam rising from his cup and said, "I never liked belt loaders." "You did good work with one today," I told him. "Yeah," he said, and smiled without looking up. "Me and the belt made up." I went to the payphone by vending machines because sometimes an old machine feels like a prayer answered. I called my wife again. She told me our daughter had gone to sleep with her shoes by her bed because the school said we might need to line up fast in the morning, and she didn't want to waste time tying laces. She told me the block had put a cooler on the corner for anyone walking by who needed water. She told me Mr. Alvarez from the third house had stood there for an hour telling jokes in his baritone like a radio host, and she had not known he had that in him. She told me she had taped a note to our door in big letters. "We are here. If you need anything, knock." "I'm here," I told her, "if you need anything." And she laughed and said, "I know where the coffee is." And we let the laugh stand in for all the words we didn't know how to say yet. When I hung up, I wrote 4 names on the whiteboard by the coffee machine. Mine, Maya's, Jess's, Owen's, and under them I wrote a phone number for the airline's crew desk, which was answering on the first ring all day because, say it with me, we're people. We build places. And then, because I needed to put something in the book that would make sense if someone flipped it open in a month and needed to know who had stood here, I wrote, Day 1, O'Hare Cargo H. We held a door. We made a room. We walked together to a new place. And I thought about my airplane cooling in the night and all the doors I had trusted, and all the doors I would have to trust again. I thought about the jet bridge, that metal hallway between worlds, and I understood something I should have understood before. You can't live your life entirely in one room or the other. You have to be brave in the middle place too, and you have to hold that space for other people. You have to be the bridge long enough for the ones behind you to cross. Just before dawn, we were told we'd be moving again. I stood and felt the way my knees told the truth they always told after a long duty day, and I smiled at the lie my mouth made for them. Let's go. And I looked at my crew and they looked at me. And between the 4 of us was a compact made not of words, but of the acts we had just performed. We would do it again somewhere else, with other doors, for as long as it took for lights to come on and stay on. Because that's what crews do, especially on days when the airport becomes a city inside a city and the only things that work are kindness and checklists. On the way out, passing the cargo door, I paused with my hand on the metal jamb. I could feel the cool of it through my skin, quiet and patient. I had the odd thought that if I pressed my ear to it, I would hear the airplane breathing again, that dog sleeping with its head on my foot, waiting for my voice to say the things I always say, checklist, pushback, cleared, and I promised it, silently, that I would be back. Not because the airplane needed me, but because the people who filled it did, and because there were people waiting on the other end of any line we could draw across a map. We would draw all the lines we could. We would be bridges for as long as bridges would hold. When the sun broke over the maintenance yard, it lit the busted edges of the world soft, generous, almost forgiving. I thought of the woman with freckles, the runner in the red hoodie, the man whose hand had pressed the porthole, the baby asleep now with her mouth open like a tiny bird. I thought of Ellis's clipboard and Navarro's map and Miguel's thumb in the air. I thought of my daughter's shoes by her bed and the note on my door and the cooler on the corner, and Mr. Alvarez telling jokes like there wouldn't be any more if he didn't keep talking. I walked out into the light with my crew. We had no new orders yet, and so we followed the oldest one in aviation and in life. Help the person nearest you, then the person next to them, and keep going until somebody tells you to stop. Day 1 was over. Day 2 would ask more, but for now we had made one small place in a big storm, and for the length of a ramp and a bridge and a bus ride, it had been enough. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.